Everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are looking at the major astrological transits of June 2021. So it's a big month. We have an eclipse. We've got we've got Saturn and Uranus coming into a square with one another all over again. Major transit there. We've got a Mercury retrograde going on. The summer solstice is coming up. So there's a lot to talk about this month. I think I've got, let's see, about 10 transits to talk about, which is way more than usual. So we'll be looking at them one at a time today. I'm also doing a live cast this week. I'm not sure which one I'm going to publish first, but I'll be doing a live cast with all of the 12 signs of the zodiac. So be sure to check that out as well. You can see how the biggest transits of the month, I'll probably whittle them down to 2 or 3 transits, will affect your chart based on your rising signs. You can always be sure to check that out. In the meantime, my new class starts in 2 weeks. We're just a little under 2 weeks to go until my new program starts. It's called Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. It is a 1-year intensive class in ancient Hellenistic astrology with an emphasis on the underlying spiritual philosophy. This is a program that's really meant to teach people how to make astrology a lifelong spiritual practice. And for many people, it will also double as something that you may end up doing for others, reading charts for others. Here is the website. You can check it out, nightlightastrology.com. Go to the courses page, click on the first year program. Of course, my second year and my horary courses begin in June as well. So if you already have background in astrology, you're welcome to take the horary course. I do ask that before people take my second year course in Hellenistic astrology, they have my first year course, regardless of what your background may be, because of the specific way that I teach. But at any rate, if you click on the first year program, you can scroll down and learn all about what the class is about, what it includes. It's about 100 hours worth of classroom content. We have breakout sessions after modules with optional tutoring if you need it. We have forum discussion year round, guest lecturers. We also have optional reading, guided homework assignments, and quizzes, all optional for people who want to go deeper. We also have a certification exam at the end for people who want to be, kind of test their skill by the end of the class. Well, about the last third of the program, every day I host live clients. You guys get to see me read, then we break down the sessions, and you guys can ask all the questions in the world that you have about the charts, about reading charts, and really see how how practicing with other people is done. So it is, I feel like my program is really the pinnacle of my work as an astrologer. I'm very proud of the work that goes into it, not only from me, but now from a whole staff of people that are involved with it. You can check it out on my website. Like I said, there's an early bird payment. You save $500 off if you pay in full before the start of the program in 2 weeks. So a good time to save. There's also a payment plan with monthly payments if you need it. And then there's tuition assistance for people who are in need. So check those out. Hopefully something will work and you can come along and study with us. All right, that being said, let's take a look at the major transits of the month of June and see what's coming. So I'm going to put these up on the screen where you can see it. And we're going to take a look at the real-time clock. So close a window here. I'm actually going to drag this over here and I'm going to reshare it. I've got 2 screens now that I'm working with. And so I'm still kind of just figuring out the best way to use my 2 screens when I present during these videos. All right. So here is what we're going to start by looking at. The very beginning of the month of June is marked by the entrance of the planet Venus into the sign of Cancer. Now, this happens almost right away around June 2nd. You can see Venus is entering Cancer right here. And then what it's going to do by June 3rd is it's going to meet a trine with Jupiter. Now, this is a really potent and positive trine. Why? Because Venus is in the exaltation of Jupiter and Jupiter is in the exaltation of Venus. So Venus in Cancer, Cancer is the exaltation of Jupiter, Jupiter in Pisces, Pisces is the exaltation of Venus. So in trines are of the nature of Jupiter. So you have a very benefic watery trine between these 2 places. I love this. I love this as a sign of very positive things. When Venus and Jupiter come together, one of the most beneficial things that can happen is you meet people who are very beneficial to you. spiritually, emotionally, psychologically. You meet that therapist that really clicks with you. You find a mentor or a teacher that really works for you. You find a community of people. You find a friend. You find an ally. Someone refers you and you get the job. Usually you're talking about very positive social connections coming in and making your life a little bit easier. The other thing that comes in is emotional sweetness and unity and harmony in relationships. A really good time for just getting along with other people or finding easy, quick, natural resolutions. Venus and Jupiter is also just a bringer of good news. Maybe you need it. Maybe there's some area of your life where you're just needing a little bit of good news. Well, I love this transit at the beginning of the month for, just bringing things together in a way that can either be relieving or healing or soothing or peaceful, or it could just be the bearer of good news. So I love that transit at the beginning of the month. One thing you'd want to be careful of is the theatricality or the grandiosity, especially on an emotional level of those two planets. They could go a little bit over the top. So watch for that one. Now we're going to go forward and, as soon as I say that transit's awesome, one of the reasons that I also love that transit is because it's acting as a kind of buffer for arguably one of the more intense transits of the month, which comes just a few days later. And that is Mars's opposition to Pluto. So Mars opposing Pluto is very nuclear. It can act as it can stand in for as a moment of great emotional catharsis, but also emotional breakthroughs while Mars is in its fall could come with a little bit of pain or grief. Something is being uncovered, something is being faced head on, confronted. Something that's a little bit heavier is being brought up from the unconscious. There can also be more explosive events. For example, I am anticipating that we are probably going to see, unfortunately, this is one of those transits where you're probably going to see it as a headline involving, death and destruction and violence, especially in images that are more vulnerable, like family, home, women, children. For example, if you go back to Mars's opposition to Pluto several years ago, it was happening, if I'm not mistaken, right around the time that the news was exploding about Jeffrey Epstein and all of the things that were happening with children. So our underage girls, I think, especially on, whatever his wherever he had his island or whatever it was. So the idea of things that are predatorial, things that are more things that are scandalous being exposed or revealed, also a more like potential for more volatile energies kind of exploding. But at the same time, there is this sense of things being dredged up that need to be dredged up, things that need to be seen finally being addressed. So I can't tell you how many times I've seen this kind of transit in a client's chart when they find a tumor, for example, and it turns out the tumor is benign, but it's been giving them a lot of fear. It doesn't have to be like this tragic, totally disastrous thing, but the idea of facing or confronting things that have been unseen, that have been surrounding us with fear, that need to be brought out into the light. They say, what do they say? Sun is the best antibiotic. So that's a pretty big moment of emotional catharsis. Now, remember that in the background, that Venus-Jupiter trine is giving us a little bit of grace and mercy in the background. So I feel like this could be softened a little bit, and there could be a sense of, by the skin of our teeth, or, kind of avoiding the worst because of the positive Venus-Jupiter connection. Remember, Pluto-Mars also really clears the air psychically, and there can be a feeling of regeneration that comes in the wake of such a transit. So for some people, it's like the clouds are finally going to burst and life is going to come back. But there is the bursting part can be intense with Mars-Pluto. So that's a pretty intense first 5 days of the month. Now, if we go forward to the 10th of the month, you have a solar eclipse in Gemini, while on the same day, Mercury is going to be Cazimi. So what do I like about this? I like this as a major moment of reset in the Gemini area of your birth chart. I'm going to be going through those in my horoscopes of the month. So be sure that you watch those videos. And again, I'm not sure if I'm publishing this first or if I'm going to publish the horoscopes first because of the Memorial Day holiday here. But the main thing to note with a big eclipse, a big solar eclipse, while Mercury, right after the eclipse, Mercury will be Cazimi on the same day at the heart of the sun. So to me, this is a major moment of rebirthing, a moment of clearing the air and a moment of moving forward again. So I really like this as just a time of, reset, rebirth. It's coming right on the heels of a Mars opposite Pluto transit. The next day on June 11th, Mars will finally get out of its fall. So I really like this moment for a deep reset. And I see it probably coming through the whole sign house of Gemini in the birth chart. So that's why, like I said, just make sure that you check that whole sign of your chart. Generally speaking, when we have a new moon in Gemini, I think a lot about getting organized or new ways of thinking or communicating. Anytime that in my life that I've started something new that has had some kind of technical or like new blogs that I've started, starting my YouTube channel or, buying, like I am in the process of redoing my sort of like tech setup for my YouTube channel. And just anytime that there's eclipses in Gemini, those are usually the times when there's going to be a new, like, innovative way of doing something around business that comes about, because Mercury was related to merchants and markets. And so any new forms of technology, new ways of doing business, to get them launched under such a moment feels very auspicious to me, especially the fact that this eclipse is going to feature Mercury Cazimi. So even though Mercury's retrograde, this is a very empowered sort of deep reset for Mercury things right now. Technology, digital or technical skills, learning and taking classes, teaching something, blog, media. I love all of these things getting like a nice deep kind of reset this month. So, okay. Let's move along now. So, and like I said, I'm going to go through what that means for each of the 12 signs in my videos. So Mars enters Leo on the 11th. That'll give, that's a pretty big shift. I feel like for Leos, actually, Leo risings, that's probably one of the more significant shifts. And I'm talking about that in my horoscopes this month as well. But the reason that that's significant is Mars stuff should get stronger at that point, because as Mars moves into the sign of Leo, again, it leaves its fall from Cancer. So June 11th, you're going to see Mars shift into Leo, at which point it's also beholding the sun from a whole sign sextile. And this is a wiser sun. This is a wiser Mars signature. And the reason for that is that it's later in its cycle. As the sun is getting closer to Mars, you can think of Mars as metaphorically aging. So I like this as a Mars that has learned some of the deeper lessons in Cancer over the past, month plus, and is now ready to become like a kind of a wiser, more sagely, more ennobled by the experiences that it's had. And you're going to see a lot more stable Mars energy coming through. So to me, that's one of the most important transits of the month, not so much because of what it is, but because of what it was and what it's becoming by contrast. Okay, so if we go forward just a little bit to the 14th, here we go. We're going to see now maybe the biggest transit of the month. I think probably most astrologers would agree that this is the biggest transit of the month, and that is Saturn's square to Uranus. And this, along with the eclipse and the Mars opposite Pluto, are basically the transits that I'm focusing on for the horoscopes this month. You definitely want to take a look at the Taurus and Aquarius axis in your chart to really see what's going on. But the short version of it is that every time this year where you felt like you're ready to hit the gas pedal, if you have felt like you're just starting to hit your stride, starting to gain momentum, boom, there's this feeling of pullback, limitation, constraint. kind of like a conservative, energetic kickback. And that's part of what a Saturn Uranus year feels like. But what's really great about this, and I'm going to show you what happens if we move forward a little bit. So we're going to take this forward through the rest of the year. And what I want to highlight for you all is what is going to happen the next time these two planets come together. So they're going to come together again in December of this year. So we have one more moment where the two of those planets are combining. That moment is, so this process began at the beginning of the year, and it has three distinct moments. We had one right around the beginning of 2021, now in June, and then again in December. So you have to think about this as an ongoing push-pull kind of experience. Let's go forward to, let me just bring this back here. Okay, so the push-pull of Uranus and Saturn can really be infuriating, but I recommend patience, because if you try to push through, you're likely to break something. It could be metaphorical breaking, it could be emotional or relational breaking, it could be physical breaking. But you don't want to, if you feel the frustration or something coming up that kind of limits or blocks progress, you don't want to grip down and try to push through and just defy and resist to the point where, you strain something. Because that's what people are prone to do with Uranus-Saturn squares. On the other hand, if you see the obstacle, it reminds me a lot of many teachings in the I Ching. If you learn to see the obstacle of the Uranus-Saturn square from the standpoint of kind of like an enlightened sage would, oh, this obstacle is for me. It's not against me. It's not blocking me. It's not prohibiting me. This is something that's come in for me. It's a blessing. It's a gift. I don't fully understand it. My initial reaction is to see it as a curse or a block or a limitation. But instead, I'm going to see this, I'm choosing to see this as a gift. And that doesn't mean we make up on the spot some bogus answer because we have some principled belief that everything is a gift. We wait patiently, we meditate, we circumambulate, we pause, and we go, why is this here for me? We ask that question repeatedly until the block reveals its inner secrets, its inner gift. Then that very block becomes the seed of radical change and innovation. It becomes the exact thing that we needed. It becomes the exact modification that we were looking for. We didn't even know we needed it. But you have to make that adjustment when the feeling of revolution is halted. And you're going like, wait, I thought I was going in this direction, and it looked so good. I all thought that it was going to go in this one particular way. Saturn will come back and sort of check that, and then your response can quite literally be, I'm not going to judge this situation, even though I'm frustrated. I'm going to assume that this is from the gods, from the divine, for me, for my spiritual evolution, and I'm going to sit with it and contemplate it and like walk around it in a prayerful mood until it reveals its interior reason for being here. If you have that kind of patience and faith and curiosity, it's amazing what the Saturn-Uranus dynamic can be. It can be something that's truly innovative, that it's flexible, because there's nothing worse than Uranus-Saturn coming through and being revolutionary, but also being like zealous, dogmatic, and so rigid that things get broken in the process. I mean, it's a funny thing that people don't think when they're in the midst of Uranus-Saturn and they feel a block coming up. They don't think, well, I'm the rigid one. They always think the block is the thing there's some rigidity externally to me that's blocking me. The easy way to turn it is to realize that it's always our reaction to circumstances that are either going to be flexible or rigid. So when Uranus-Saturn comes forth, just remember to be flexible and patient and curious. The other thing that I would say about this transit is that these are the transits that come when there are real breakthroughs. The other side of this is that it's not just a block. It's not just a restriction to the freedom-loving qualities of Uranus. It's also where the principled, structured, and let's say wise kind of elder energy of Saturn mixes with the youthful, kind of erratic, innovative qualities of Uranus, so that you can have principled revolution. You can have solid, time-tested, long-lasting, committed forms of innovation and originality. So you want to watch for those things coming through. And they'll be especially potent if you have planets around 13 degrees of the fixed signs or angles, or if they're falling in angular houses, if you have, any of the fixed signs rising. So again, we'll visit that in our horoscopes for the month. Okay, well then on the 20th, we get to the summer solstice moment. Now, this moment, if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, people always ask this, and I'll say it again, it does not need to be taken literally. This is a energetic shifting point within the language of the zodiac. So, just think of dynamism coming in very powerfully at any time, any equinox or solstice. It doesn't matter if you're in the Northern or Southern Hemisphere, because this is a symbolic language. So the underlying point of the sun crossing that, even though the sun is the one that's most literal for us, right? Because the sun is the literalness of the sun crossing those points are opposite, or they're flipped in the Northern and Southern Hemisphere. But all I want you to think about, if you're in the Southern Hemisphere or the Northern Hemisphere, is a significant energetic turning point in the year. It's a very good time to start things, and you're going to notice that quality of, like dynamism coming in and shifting the story quite dramatically. What I think about is I've been in a chapter of life for the past 90 days. And that, like, for example, I'll give you my own story. We've been moving. So I am anticipating that when the sun comes into Cancer here in the Northern Hemisphere, of course, that's the summer solstice, that the energetic focus of my life is going to shift significantly. And there'll be a new chapter that comes in, just like when like a new moon in a lunar cycle. Think of that cardinal crossing point of any of the equinoxes or solstices as a very dramatic turning point energetically within your year. So again, that's the way that I would handle it. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere thinking about it, you don't need to be too literal about the seasons. Now, every time I say this, of course, there are like a zillion comments, and some of them obviously really well-intentioned, really smart comments, others really obnoxious. But the point is that if you go back in my videos, in my archives, and look at a video, I think it's like, what about the Southern Hemisphere or something like that. There's a number of videos in my archives where I address this question of why the zodiac works in both hemispheres, and you don't need to flip it. You could, but you don't need to. And why multiple zodiacs work. Why does the Chinese zodiac? Why does the sidereal zodiac? Why do the tropical? Why do they all work? And they have different orientations, but why do they still work to be very descriptive and predictively accurate? I've talked about that in previous videos. So just go look in the archives if you're scratching your head about that one. Okay, so then on the 21st, Jupiter is going to turn retrograde. Now, the reason that I think that's a big deal is because we're now going to see Jupiter trending back toward Aquarius. So that won't happen until later in July, but we have gotten a taste for Jupiter in Pisces, and now we're going to see Jupiter in Pisces returning to Jupiter in Aquarius, and it's starting that turning point by late June. So we will be visiting that retrograde later in June in a video, but just an important point to note that Jupiter will start heading back toward Aquarius at that point. You'll start to feel a momentum shift between the houses of Aquarius and Pisces in your birth chart around that time. That's something we'll go through later in the month as well. Finally, maybe one of the more, potent transits of the month, are arguably right up there with the others, is on June 23rd. And we'll just say 23rd into the 24th of June, Venus is going to oppose Pluto in the same place that Mars was when Mars opposed Pluto. Now, the reason I like this is because there's an opportunity here for the feminine Venus to come and almost add her testimony to the previous transit that happened earlier in the month on June 5th. So by the end of the month, you have Venus going through the same dynamic. Maybe there's some healing there. If there was something that was... especially if there was something that was, let's say, more volatile or intense and not necessarily representing, protecting, defending, or acknowledging or honoring of the feminine. And Mars in Cancer can be like that. Like you'll see Mars in Cancer showing up a lot as like a violence toward women or violence toward children or domestic violence or something like that. Venus going over that same degree could bring some needed relief or healing to the earlier dynamic in the month. So I like this again because it feels like there's a buffer built in for some of the harder transits this month, where you almost could imagine this being a more healing dynamic by the end of the month. On the other hand, Venus-Pluto opposition is also going to be about those deep, intense Plutonian themes of change and transformation, death and rebirth within relationships, especially those to do with family, women, children, love, anything related to home and family dynamics. And so you're going to see more catharsis this month around the Cancerian themes because of Pluto's opposition. You'll see that peaking again by June 23rd. So that's what I've got for this month. I can't wait to walk through all of these transits one by one. I'm going to be walking through a few of these big transits with all 12 signs in my sun and rising sign horoscopes for the month. So again, be sure to check those out. Remember, my new class is starting, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic, on June 13th. You can participate live or remotely. It's a very flexible program. And there's a lot of help there for people. It's easy, in online classrooms to feel overwhelmed sometimes because it's a little bit more, like impersonal online, and sometimes classes are bigger. So this program, we've really done a lot to make sure that people have as much personalized help as possible throughout the year. So yeah, be sure to check it out. If you have any questions, email me, info@nightlightastrology.com. And I hope that you guys have a fantastic month of June. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.